Founders, welcome back to the 0 to 5,000 podcast, where we obsess over the convergence of human potential and business results. Today, our hosts Drew McClure and Jordan Mitchell have another insightful conversation for you. So let's jump right in.
All right, founders, welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Jeremy Miner, the founder and chairman of 7th Level. With 17 years of sales experience and education background from Utah Valley University, Jeremy founded 7th Level, a sales training mastery company that helps sales professionals break traditional selling techniques. In just 3 years, Jeremy has helped over 141,000 salespeople 3x, 5x, and even 10x their sales results. Featured on Forbes, USA Today, Inc., Entrepreneur Magazine, Thrive Global, Yahoo Finance, and more. Jeremy also co-authored a book this year with Jerry Acuff, CEO of Delta Point, called The New Model of Selling, Selling to an Unsellable Generation. From sales and beyond, Jeremy is not afraid to tackle it all, and here to share that story is Jeremy. So Jeremy, thank you, my friend, for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me come out, Drew. My assistant must have sent you an old bio from 2 years ago, because at this point, we're 390 some thousand salespeople we've trained. So she must see you bio from like 2 years ago, but that's all right. I'm like, what? I never heard that one. But hey, it's a pleasure being on your show, and look forward to, giving your audience everything we've done. And, this is our 4th year now. Okay. The good, the bad, the ugly, that's gotten us to where we're at, and we're still growing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, tell me this, how did this get started?
7th Level. So I had a very successful sales career. I retired when I was back in 2017. I retired. So it's 39 then. Yeah, something like that. I'm getting old. So I retired from my career. I was like, when I say retired, I was like, well, I'll just take a couple years off. Maybe I'll get into real estate, because I was doing some of that, dabbling in that. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll just take a couple of years off. Yeah. But after about a year, I just kind of started getting bored. And I started seeing all these ads on like Instagram and YouTube and Facebook from, what I call the sales gurus, talking about like, when 1001 closing techniques. And I would read them and I'm like, those don't work at all. Like if I would have used those, I would have made 90% less in my career than I did. And so it started getting me to think like, man, I see all this training out there, and I see all these salespeople want to acquire knowledge, but they're just not acquiring the right knowledge. Because like I said, my background's behavioral science and human psychology. So I quickly found that what my professors were teaching me, people like Robert Cialdini, that has the best-selling book Persuasion, and he talks about persuasion and all these different things. And I was learning human behavior from psychologists at NYU, and just people that really know what they're talking about. And they were saying that the highest form of persuasion was over here, yet the sales gurus, they were all basically saying it was over here. It was like exactly the opposite when I first got my first sales job when I was like a 20-year-old kid. And I started okay, how do I, the sales stuff from the gurus, it seemed like it would always trigger sales resistance. People would put their guard up. Then I'd have to overcome objections all the time. And it was just like this constant battle and mind games with yourself, where you just have anxiety and you're nervous and you have all this pressure all the time because people get buyer's remorse and they cancel, and you're trying to push. And it just works against human behavior. So I'm like, how do I take what I'm learning from behavioral science, like the theory of this, the way the brain makes decisions? How does the brain decide to go left or right? Why does the brain decide to go look up instead of down? Why does the brain say yes or say no? What triggers us to make decisions in the buying process? That's really what behavioral science is. And so I'm like, how do I take that theory and wrap that into my sales process? And I really started having to do that very early on, as a 22-year-old kid, because I didn't have a choice. I wasn't making that much money using the old selling techniques.
Sure.
And so I learned how to get my prospects. I started using techniques that would work with human behavior rather than work against it. And I noticed that my prospects were just letting their guard down. It was triggering them. It was disarming them, where they just became open to me and would tell me everything and basically sell themselves. And so I learned how to get them to pull me in, right? Where they were chasing me rather than me trying to push and mangle them forward. And at that point, selling became very, very easy and extremely profitable for sure. That's how I got started. So basically seeing all those gurus, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should do something. And I just jumped in 2018, and that's where it all started.
What industry were you in doing sales?
I was in 4 different industries.
Okay.
So I was in 2 B2C, business to consumer, and then I was in 2 B2B. Okay, business to business. That's why, like, our clients, out of all the salespeople we train, I think right now we did a survey, 59% are in B2C sales and 41% are in B2B, and that's typically the break anyways, because there's more B2C sales out there than B2B anyways, just kind of the way the break works. But the first industry I sold in was door-to-door home security systems. So that's really B2C. That's residential. The second industry I sold B2B, I got into like debt consolidation with like SMB companies, sometimes a little bit higher, where you're calling them like they were in debt. You're helping them like, move that debt around for lower interest rate and stuff. So a lot of cold calling and stuff, did exceptionally well there. And then I got into the third one was network marketing. So that's really B2C. I still hold records in that. I'm in the MLM Hall of Fame, and I was only in it for 4 years. I'm ranked in the top 150 earners of all time, and I was only in, and I'm talking like out of every MLM company.
Wow.
And I was only in it for 4 years. So I was making multiple 7-figures years. Very easy to do that once you learn how to communicate with people. And then the last industry was a hybrid of B2B and B2C. It was more like high ticket events for like investors, like 50 grand events, 100 grand events. But you're speaking to like more companies, sometimes individuals, but a lot of times companies and stuff. So B2B and B2C, I understand, the ins and outs, because I was just in the trenches doing them.
Do you see the sales philosophies being different, whether you're doing B2B sales or B2C or? No,
the same structure that we train companies is all the same. Whether we train, like Google AdWords is one of our largest clients. We train like 4 of their divisions. That's the same as if we train like a home improvement company that's selling residential cabinets. Like the structure of the sales process is all the same, from like connecting questions to situation questions to problem awareness to solution awareness to consequence questions to, how we present to the, commitment stage. But the only difference is like in B2C, it's a 1-call close, right?
Okay.
Sometimes B2C sales is a 2-call close. It just depends. Like let's say if you're selling home improvement windows, sometimes you might knock on the door, qualify them, then set an appointment to come back later. It just depends. Sometimes somebody else is setting that appointment and then you're coming in for the close. So it's more of a 2-call close. Sometimes it's just a 1-call close where you're on a telephone, selling an insurance policy. That might just be a 1-call close. Now, B2B, you're typically not in a 1-call close. Right? Especially the larger the companies are, typically the longer the sales cycle is, because it has to go through legal, has to go through a board approval. Like there's just different things that the board has in their bylaws that they have to follow. So a lot of times when we see salespeople that, let's say if they sold cars and they're like, oh, I want to sell cybersecurity now, and they come and try to for the kill on that first discovery call, they're just like, oh my gosh, I can't sell anything. Well, it's not like they're giving you an objection when they say it has to go through legal. Like that's in the company's bylaws. Like they can't approve the decision without it first literally going through legal, or they're going to get fired. Like you can't overcome that concern. Now you have to know how to navigate through that company where you get other decision makers involved, because let's say you're doing that first call discovery, that's just like one decision maker. But the average company, I read an article in Forbes a few months ago, the average company in the United States of America, it's very similar throughout the developed world. There's 6.7 decision makers and or influencers making that decision in the average size company. I'm not even talking about enterprise level companies. Like if you're selling to like, freaking Adobe, there might be 15 people that have to pass on that decision. Now, I'm not saying that they are all decision makers. Let's say the average, there's seven people involved in that decision. Well, there might only be 2 or 3 that make the final decision, but you're going to have others that influence what they decide. Let's say you're selling cybersecurity, and the chief technology officer might not be able to make the decision, but he can influence, let's say, the CEO, who's the ultimate decider, which way to go. And that CTO might be threatened by your new software. They might feel like their job's on the line because now their boss is going to know that really they're not doing as well as they could be. Like there's so many different things you have to understand in B2B and how to navigate through an organization to get all decision makers and influencers on your side to have complete control of that sale. Whereas B2C, it's just you and the consumer. So it's just different. But in B2B, typically they're larger priced items. You're not really selling something that's $1,000. You're not, or $100 a month, right? Typically, that's not really the case. Now, there are certain circumstances around that, but some companies we train have solutions that are $10 to $50 million sales just for one sale to a company. So it just depends. So it's B2C to B2B. It's really understanding the different ins and outs of the sales process is different.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I want to come back in just a few minutes to some sales questions for you. But as a business owner yourself, going from, hey, you're out there doing your craft, being a salesperson, to now I'm building a sales company, right? A training company and all the things that you all do. What has that journey been like for you building that business?
Man, I'll tell you, the first year and a half was really, really hard. I'm just going to be real with everybody here. Like, we're a large company now, probably in the top 10 revenue wise of all sales training companies in the United States within our fourth year. But the first year and a half, we were like right here because the first year and a half, it was basically me. And I convinced my assistant from my former job to come work for me as my assistant. And we had one part-time salesperson for the first year and a half. Okay. So imagine me, like I'm the one that, wrote all the content, recorded all the content for our virtual training courses, was doing all of that, was doing the group training for our clients, was doing webinars, was trying to put together the webinars, was trying to figure out how to write copy, was trying to figure out how to do ads, trying to run the business. And like, I don't know how to do any of that. I'd never ran a company before, right? Like at one company, I was the vice president of sales. So I ran sales teams. I knew how to do that. But it's completely different than running a company. Because when vendors would come to me like, oh, we can do your marketing for Facebook ads. We're the best on planet Earth. Oh, here's 50 grand. Like I was just throwing money, like trying to see if something would work. And that's not a good strategy. So about a year and a half in, luckily for me, and I don't think anything's by luck. I think it's by divine intervention in my mind. Okay. So what happened is one of my clients who owned a bunch of gyms over in Australia, we helped him scale that. He sold that. And I'm like convinced him to come over and be my business partner and CEO of the company, to actually run the company, the business, because he was extremely talented in that. I saw that as a leader and just how he managed and everything, did that. And so he came over and he brought over another person. His name's Marco Cortese. He's now our chief revenue officer. And Marco runs all of our sales and marketing. He's over those divisions. Like he's over our VP of sales and our VP of marketing. And so when we started doing that and we started bringing our marketing internal, because we understand the brand the best, we just went like this, like very quickly. We went from like literally nothing to like millions and millions of dollars of revenue a month, like overnight. And so that's where we got on the Inc. 5, your show, the Inc. 5000 list. I think in 2020, we were ranked 1,200 something. And then 2021 last year, we were like 390, 391. I can't remember. I'll have to look back there. And then I'm assuming we'll get it in 2022. I'm assuming we'll probably be in the top 100 with our revenues. But, if we look on that list, both of those years, we were the fastest growing sales training company. So it's really about having, I figured out really quick, you can have the best training, you can have the best products, the best services, but you are not going anywhere until you have the right team around you that have skills and strengths that you don't have. So my strengths were obviously training and fulfillment and all that type of stuff, but I didn't have a strength of running a company and scaling it. I'd never done it, right? So when you bring in the right people that have strengths where you have weaknesses and you focus on your core ability and strength and you let them run that, like you can scale very, very quickly. Like I know you read that I was the chairman and founder. I'm not even the chairman anymore. So I was the CEO. Then he came in and was the CEO. Now we have a new chairman of the board, because the chairman of a board in a real company, like you have to you have to do a lot of like administrative work. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. So like, well, you shouldn't be the chairman. So now I'm just like literally the founder. I'm like nothing. I'm just the founder of the company. So as you grow, and I don't have anything to do with running the day-to-day business. I'm not on any of the meetings. I don't do any of that stuff. I just focus on the training and the content and developing new products. And it's kind of like this, like Tony Robbins, Tony and I do different things, but he's focused on his content, what's he's going to say in the events. He's not like sitting there running the day-to-day business every day. He probably has a CEO that does that, right? And that's why his company is exploded. Plus, obviously, his content gets results, right? So if you have training, if you have programs or products or services that get clients like massive results, and you have the right team to help you in like marketing and sales and management and running the business, like it's pretty much impossible not to scale and become very successful in my mind. But if you don't have those pieces, man, it's freaking hard.
Yeah. Was it freeing or scary or both, making that decision to bring in those players and give them some of that control?
I mean, to me, it was freeing because like it let me focus on my core strengths, what I'm really, really strong at. And my weaknesses, I'm like, I don't have to learn all that because how can you? Now, I realize in the beginning when you start your own thing, it's like sometimes people have just like shoestring budgets. So they're just kind of like, they have to do everything until they have enough revenue to bring in other people. But I would always suggest like, because I have some friends, and I'm still not understanding why they do this, but like, I'm not giving any ownership to anybody. It's just going to be me and blah, blah. I'm like, well, that's your problem. Like you want to have a business partner that is exceptionally talented in what you're not, and vice versa. You don't want to bring in a business partner that has the same exact skills as you do, because your company's going to be over here, but you need all this. So you want to bring in a business partner that has skills that completely opposite of yours, in my mind. Okay. And so I see a lot of people like solopreneurs that just have this mindset of like, I'm only going to be the only owner. It's just going to be me. I'm like, well, it's going to take you a long time to grow because you don't have strengths that somebody else could. Now, that other person you bring in, you don't just bring in some, guy or gal that you don't know, that's not vetted, that hasn't done it before. Like you want to bring in somebody that's like quite literally done it before and knows what they're doing, not just has some good ideas. Because good ideas and then execution of those ideas are two completely different skill sets.
Absolutely. Yeah. How do you see what those complementary skills are? So if you're kind of the face, the content creator,
I'm like the brand ambassador. They even gave me a title. I'm now the chief the chief creative officer, whatever that means. I'm like, hey, thanks for the title, but I'll just stick to founder. But it's just having skill sets. Like now our chief revenue officer is exceptionally talented in scaling all of our marketing ads. Like we dominate on Facebook. Out of all the sales training companies in the United States, we spend the most on Facebook ads. Over any company you see on there, we spend the most. We have the data now. So like we dominate there. We also dominate really, really well on Instagram now. Now, YouTube, we don't. That's something we just bought a media buyer. And so now we're really focused on YouTube ads in 2023. It's just a nut we haven't cracked yet. We're not, even though we've grown really, really fast, it's like you can't grow too fast. And that's one thing like our CEO would always tell me, because I'm like, well, we're spending X, Y, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on ads. Like, let's just double it. And he's like, okay, well, if we double sales in a month, you're going to break our fulfillment, because we have to now double the sales trainers. We have to double the fulfillment. We have to double all this stuff. And I just wouldn't think of that. I'm like, well, let's just go. Like the ads are converting, they just spend twice as much. Well, the problem is if you double all of that, you can't catch up quick enough to double the fulfillment. And then your clients don't get all the results they wanted to. And then that affects the brand long term. So sometimes even we've grown like, crazy fast, even in the last year, grow by 1,400% over the year before, which we grew like crazy. Sometimes we just have to pump the brakes a little bit and not grow too fast to overwhelm your fulfillment. So you have to think long term. You want your business to be around 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. Like when you're gone, you have to focus on your customers and fulfillment of what they bought from you and make that a great experience, even with your customer service. Because let's say you double your sales overnight. Well, how are you going to go double your customer service department overnight? You can't. And now you get complaints and like, so there's just things like that that I just didn't understand because I was a salesperson and sales manager and VP of sales. I never saw that side of the business because I wasn't an owner of the companies I worked for. Right. And so now I understand it a little bit better, but I don't specialize in that. We have people that do that. And that's why we're scaling so quick.
What does fulfillment look like for you all? Is it a combination of products you've already created that are digital that people go through at their own pace? Yeah. Is it direct, you have people that have to work directly with clients? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. It depends on if they're B2, like if they're a company compared to like, we train a huge insurance company that's like 22,000 agents. Okay. So we have like training calls with them, like group training calls with them that we have to fulfill. We also have to fill like making sure that all thousands of their reps have access to the virtual training portal. That's a 37-hour course that they go through, and who onboards all those people, like who shows them how to use it. We don't do it one-on-one, but we have tutorials that walk people through how to operate that. We have tutorials. We have sales trainers. Like, let's say they're a company that has 10 reps on there that will schedule a call, and then they walk them through how to track the progress of all the reps going through that platform. So that's what I'm talking about. We even have group training calls where, on Mondays, we focus on scripting as a group. There might be 500 sales, like individual B2C salespeople on there. When I say B2C, I mean like they could sell B2B, but they're like the company didn't pay for it. They paid for the training themselves. Right. One might be a medical device salesperson. One might be selling insurance. One might sell cars. One might sell high ticket coaching. One might sell network marketing. One might sell as a real estate agent. So there might be 500 people on that weekly, group training where I help them as a group, show them how to tie in NEPQ, neuro emotional persuasion questioning, our methodology to their industry and make it specific. So that's like group training. We have to fulfill that. I actually do that myself. That's our advanced inner circle training. But then we have other programs that are below that, like NEPQ Advanced 3.0, where we have sales trainers that do all that stuff. And there's like maybe 1,000 people on each one of those or more. Yeah. So you have to not only hire people, but you have to hire people that have actually gone through the training, that are certified, that went out and used it for their industries and crushed it. And now we bring them over. And a lot of times we have industry specific trainings as well. So like, on Tuesday, we might have industry specific training for only insurance agents where we help them tie in NEPQ to what they sell. Mondays, it might be solar. Wednesdays, it might be real estate agents. So we're big now where we can bring in clients who took the training a few years ago and like quadrupled 4 times their income. And now we pay them to be sales trainers on the side for us to be able to show our clients how to tie in NEPQ to their industry specific.
Can you explain what NEPQ is?
Yeah, NEPQ stands for neuro emotional persuasion questioning. So my background, human behavior and human psychology, that's what I went to school for. I actually dropped out my senior year. I still have 13 credits left. Because people are like, oh, you got your degree? I'm like, technically, no, I still have 13 credits left. But I was so involved in my sales career there. Like I was a 22, 23-year-old kid. And I was still taking I couldn't pass college algebra, just to be real with everybody. Like I hated that. It was like my last thing. I'm like, how am I going to pass this? Like math, like that doesn't make my brain doesn't work that way. It's like, I might as well be reading like Mandarin. You just like, I have no idea what this means, right? X plus Y equals Z divided by 4. Like, okay, that makes 0 sense to me. So I would walk into class and here I am, I probably at that age, I was probably making like 70,000 a month in commissions.
Damn.
A month. And I was walking in, I was 23, 24. I was walking into my professor who was making that in a year. And I'm like, what am I doing here? And so as a salesperson, I'm like, I don't need a degree, right? Like I'm still learning. I want to make more money. But for a salesperson, like what good is this degree going to give me? Nothing. Now, for some, you have to get a degree. If you're going to be an attorney, doctor, nurse, you have to like have a degree. But for salespeople and business people, I find that school, I think, is a good start, but you're not really learning advanced material, and I'm not saying all professors are like this, but by a professor who might have never owned their own company in the first place. Sure. They're just teaching the theory, or they don't understand. There's not really any sales training courses in colleges that I know of.
Yeah.
So, I just figured like I just started learning more like by going to events, by human psychologists that would write a book about, why the reptilian part of our brain triggers fight or flight mode. And I would learn way more from going to a weekend event than I would an entire semester of paying a college thousands of dollars to go to.
Sure. Can you give an example of what it looks like to apply NEPQ to a sales situation?
Well, in what situation? Give me some context.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just curious of what
industry do you come from?
So I coach founders of fast growing companies.
Okay. So do you come in and like teach them how to scale their companies? What do you do? Like what?
No. So we're on the people side, right? So typically we're helping their leadership team avoid burnout and, see and navigate their blind spots.
Yeah.
So that we can get more out of people.
So here's a consequence question. So what happens if you don't do anything about this and your sales managers keep getting burned out and then they start leaving for other companies? Like what happens to you guys at that point? Have you thought about the ramifications if you guys don't do anything about this burnout and then your managers go to other companies? See, that's a consequence question. So that's just an example. You're not asking that in the first part of a conversation. That's more towards the end where you get them to think like the consequences or ramifications of not doing anything. So I'm just giving you an example. That's just off the top of my head.
No, it's really good because that was the hardest part for me going from like a practitioner to having to be a salesperson for my own business. Yeah. I wasn't good at the sales conversation because all I knew was when someone said yes, like help me with this, I know I can help you. But navigating the conversation to see the need, understand the ramifications was difficult.
Well, especially if you're talking to a company, right? Because when you're talking to that company, who would you normally talk to? Like a department head first, like human resources, or who?
It started that way and it almost always stalled out. And so I started going straight to the top. So now almost all my sales comes from starting with the founder. And if I get passed anywhere, I get passed down, It depends on your industry. If you want to start in the middle or the top, it just kind of depends. Like in large, like huge enterprise companies, it's almost impossible to start at the top. True. And they get annoyed at that because if you try to get a hold of, let's say, I'm just throwing this out, the CEO of Google. Well, number one, you're never going to get them. Number two, they would be annoyed because they don't make decisions like that. Their department heads do, right? Yeah. So their department heads get a budget for, let's say, training. Let's say you're, in your category, avoiding burnout stuff would be in their mind like training or some type of health and wellness training or mental training, right? So let's say they're going to have a budget of, $150,000, in the next year or the next 6 months for that. And once it's spent, like with those large enterprise companies, it's very hard unless you're really good at getting them to pull money from other departments. It's not like they don't have the money, but they give their department heads permission to spend that money. And the department heads quite literally decide, not like the CEO, right? But if it's like SMB companies, that you might be dealing with, that's a whole different. You'd probably start more at the top there. No, that's spot on. We have a few like really large Fortune 500 clients, and no way we're starting at the top. No, but our bread, no way. But our bread and butter is like 50 to 150 employees, that kind of SMB category, and those founders are still a lot of times holding on to control, and they're the one that wants to know who's influencing their people, and there's only like one or maybe even two.
Yeah, that would be like us. Like right now we're under 150 employees worldwide, right? So that would be like what we would be considered as, and you wouldn't even go to me at that, like, but you could get like to our CEO.
Yeah, exactly.
So there,
yeah, man, that makes a whole lot of sense. I want to, what I'm curious about is if you could change the mind, like if someone's listening and they either are a salesperson or they're like me, they're the owner of their company and they have to sell their company. What is one thing that you wish you could help or change their mind about regarding sales?
I think it's this thing. I think most people are afraid of sales, and I don't blame them. And I know why they're afraid of sales, because they've been forced to learn techniques that work against human behavior, that trigger sales resistance, that trigger objections, and ultimately trigger massive rejection. And as a human being, that's the one thing we fear the most, is being rejected, right? So once you learn how to use techniques that work with human behavior, that actually trigger the prospect to let their guard down and become open to you, okay, and you know how to help them find problems that they didn't even know they had, selling becomes very enjoyable because it's a two-way street. Like most sales training will teach you, like all these books behind me, for the most part, 9 out of 10 of them on those shelves, if you're watching this, are going to say like, hey, and they don't say it in this word, but the way they come across it means this. They basically train that selling is adversarial. Yeah. It's you against the prospect trying to win them over, manipulate them to purchase so you can make money. Well, that's what average salespeople do in our time. That's what average salespeople do, or bad salespeople that don't sell that much. Okay. You want to sell a ton. You want to make multiple 6 figures a year or more in commissions in your industry listening here. If you're a salesperson or if you're a business owner that wants to scale to 7 figures and then 8 figures and then eventually 9 figures plus, you have to understand, and your sales teams have to understand, that selling is collaborative. It's you working with your prospects to help them find and solve problems to get them where they want to be. Because there's never been a product or service of any type ever invented that doesn't either solve a problem and or an emotional need, right? Like even if you sell luxury cars, if you sell Lamborghinis that sell for $400,000 to $500,000, that doesn't really solve a problem, because if they want to go from point A to point B, they can drive a used Honda. But it does solve an emotional need. There's an emotional need that's solved by a human being going and spending $500,000 on a vehicle rather than $30,000 on a vehicle, right? It's more status in their community. Maybe as a child, they were poor, so they want to prove to their classmates or their neighbors that they've arrived and that they're really successful. See, you're solving an emotional need. So in any sales situation, it's up to you to solve that prospect's problems and or emotional needs. Now, you can only learn how to do that by learning the right skills. Because if you can't learn the right skills, if you can't learn the right questions to open the prospect up, to get them to go below the surface and tell you the truth of what's really going on, they stay surface level with you in that sales process. And at the end, they say, well, this sounds really good, but I really need to think this over. I really need to pray about it. It's a big decision. I don't make rash decisions like this. I need to do more research. I need to look at other vendors. I need to get other quotes. And the only reason why they said that is because your questioning ability, and especially your tone, triggered them to emotionally shut down, because you probably sound scripted with your questions, okay? It triggered them to emotionally shut down. They stayed surface level, and they never open up to you, so you're never able to build a gap from where they are compared to where they want to be. What's the gap? All these newfound problems that your questioning skills can allow them to see they have, they didn't know they had, or they didn't understand they had. And that's why you get all those crazy objections at the end. I'd rather prevent most of those objections from even happening. It makes selling so much easier.
Yeah. What do you do? Obviously you're hoping that through the right questions and the relationship you create, you don't get to this point, but I've still gotten to the point where there were no objections that I was aware of. We got to the we're going to press go, and then you get ghosted.
Well,
right.
Well, that's because they. So give me an example. Just give me one example where that happened.
Man, we went through discovery call. We went through, all right, great. I need to get this, person who's in charge of all people development on the phone. Awesome. They were so excited. We even talked about where we were going to.
Hold on. What happens if you go to Dwayne over at purchasing and you tell them that you guys want to take part of your annual budget to put in the training so your sales managers don't burn out, but then they don't want you to do it? Like, what would you do at that point? See, it's these questions where you have to find. So let's say that you go to him, like, what potential pushback would you get from the board? So you've got to ask those type of questions in a B2B setting.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, if I do go to Dwayne, there is a possibility he might not like it. See, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
That I now have to deal with that. Because if you just let them go, like, oh, they're going to go take care of it and talk to this person, that person, man, like you have no control of that sales process, because those other two people might shut your person that's on your side down quickly. So you got to prep for that, especially in a B2B setting, by saying like, okay, so this is another consequence question. It's just used in a different format. Okay, but what happens if you go to Dwayne and he doesn't want you to take part of the budget to put into the workshop? Like, what happens to your management team at that point if they're still burned out?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but okay, but once again, they've said like, well, I know he'd want to do it, blah, blah. Okay, but what happens if you go to him and he doesn't want to? Like, what happens to you guys at that point? Okay. So it's like a double consequence question. Or you could, a question that works really, really well. Like if they're going to go to the board or legal or something, right? Because it has to go through that, especially when you're selling enterprise. It's just in the bylaws. And you say, well, what potential pushback do you feel you might get from the board? Well, I think he would want to and she, but Dwayne, he always hates spending money. Well, see, now you got a problem.
Yeah.
Now you have to find out who Dwayne is and what Dwayne's role is in this, and then see if we can get Dwayne on a next meeting or call.
Heck yeah.
That gives you more control of the sales process.
Yeah. It's also helping discover what issues they might run into that they haven't made aware to you. And you can go ahead and be a part of that conversation. Also, it seems like you keep bringing it back to the consequence of not making the decision, right?
The consequence, and I'm also tying in them getting the funds or the money to the end result.
Okay.
Right? If they can get the funding and the money, they get what they want. If they can't get the funding or money, they don't get what they want. So when you tie in the money with the result they want, they don't look at the money as like price or cost-based thinking. They look at it as more of the result-based thinking.
Yeah.
And that makes the cost seem very cheap when they're thinking about the end result. If they're just thinking about the cost or price and they're not thinking about the end result, that's when you're in trouble. But you can help control that by the questions you ask.
Yeah, so good. I know we've only got about 5 minutes left here, 4 minutes left. What gets you most excited about the future for your company and where you're building this out to?
We get it. We are crazy people over here, but we love testimonials. We have over 11,000 at this point in our, in the last 30 months, actually. We have a person that only looks for testimonials. Like, because a lot of people will post them in our Facebook group, Sales Revolution. We got like 40-some thousand people in there, or they'll post them like on our IG reels and ads, like they're clients of ours. So we quite literally have a person that's all they do is track down testimonials every day.
Wow.
And so that tells us the results we're getting for our clients, if that makes sense. We have more than, sales training companies that have been around since the 70s that are 50 years old, that are very large corporations that are bigger than us right now. And so that keeps us going, where we know that we're impacting those people's life. And we don't even ask people to post those. They just post. If we asked everybody, we'd probably have 4 times as much. I don't even know. But, the testimonials show us hey, we're getting these people results. We're, what they paid for, they're getting 10 times more. So let's say if they paid for one of our advanced courses and they put in $7,000 or $8,000, but now they're making $15,000 more per month in commissions. Well, that's pretty cheap, comparatively speaking, right?
Yeah.
For that prospect. So that's what keeps me going. That's why I keep getting up every day and getting on podcasts. And, we do 160 reels a month.
Wow.
Of just, we give out little nibbles, little hors d'oeuvres, to wet people's mouths and those type of things. And that requires a lot of work to do all that stuff. We don't just shoot 160 reels in an hour.
Yeah.
So we repurpose some of our group training. We don't repurpose our virtual training content for our clients. Like, nobody has that unless they're a client. And that's where all the magic is. But all of our reels, we repurpose this. We'll probably take 3 or 4 clips of this and they'll be in reels 3 weeks from now, somewhere. So we do that on, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube Shorts now. And so we do 14 a week. So we do 2 a day on each platform.
Yeah.
Plus on IG, we do 2 reels a day plus 2 training posts a day. So they're seeing it 4 times a day. So just, you got to keep up the content machine, I guess.
How often are you creating content?
So that's all so my Thursdays and Fridays, I dedicate, like I said, the repurposed content, we just do I'm usually on about 3 to 4 guest podcasts a week. Plus I do 2 hour-and-a-half training calls per week for some of our advanced clients. All that gets repurposed. Plus all my keynotes. I usually will do 1 to 2 keynotes a month. Mm-hmm. Keynotes are not a really big part of our business. We get paid to do the keynote, but it's not like we get paid millions of dollars to do a keynote. It's not a big part of our business, but we do it because we can create reels and repurpose it, if that makes sense. So that all gets chopped up. Out of the 160 reels we do a month, about 100 to 110 of those come from just repurposed stuff we're already doing.
Oh, wow.
Right? The other 50 are intentionals that we do. So we have a content manager that goes into YouTube and the search engines and finds out what salespeople are typing in, looking for. How do I gain more confidence on a cold call? So I'll do a reel about that. What do I say when the prospect says, I'm not interested in the first 10 seconds? And so we do a reel on that. So every month we have different categories, and that causes our content to go viral. We have reels that have, some of them have 1 million views, and then others might only have 50,000 views. But it causes that to go more viral because that's what most people are searching for. So every month it's different.
Awesome. Well, I know we're at time. Last question is just, where should I send people if they're interested in taking advantage of learning from you and your company? Where do they go?
We'll give them some hors d'oeuvres first, some free nibbles. Just have them join one of our Facebook groups for free. That's a good place to start.
Okay.
Have them go to salesrevolution.pro, salesrevolution.pro. And right when they join, everybody check your Facebook Messenger. We'll have somebody on our team message over to you a free training. We'll give you the 101 NEPQ 101 mini course. It's just like basic. It's just like a list of different questions you can ask for different sales situations.
Cool.
That alone will probably help them sell more than what they are now. And we go live in the group 3 or 4 times a week with different Q&As, different trainings, stuff like that. And those are little nibbles that we give out. And they want more advanced training. If they're wanting to like double, triple, quadruple their sales or their company, just have them message me in that group and tell because sometimes every once in a while I'll get in there and respond, but maybe 20 minutes a day. But most of the time it's somebody on my team.
Yeah.
Right. And just tell them, hey, I heard Jeremy on a podcast. I'm interested in like their advanced training options. And they'll book you in with one of our team members that will go over like training options we have that are industry specific for their industry.
Awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much, man, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it was a pleasure, man. I love your show. Thank you.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Founders, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hop into our monthly founder email so we can ensure you stay on the edge of peak performance and massive business results.